Good morning, stats class. It's Miss O'Neill. I took a look at the poll that I had posted in Canvas, and it looks as though many of you guys would like to see question number 2 from your Fractional Equations Day 2 assignment. I had one person want to take a look at number 3, so what I'll do for that student is I will help to find the common denominator that we will then multiply each piece by, so that way I can set you up, but you will be in charge of having to finish solving to get your answers. Remember, towards the bottom, Mr. Parada did put your final answers on each one of these. This is a great assistance for you because you are supposed to, at the last step, check to see if any of your answers for X end up making that bottom equal a 0. If it does, you have to cross it off and cancel it. According to our steps, that is the last checking stage that we do. We are not allowed to have a bottom of 0, or that is considered undefined. Okay, so let's go with number 2 first. All right, number 2 starts out with us taking a look at these pieces. In order for you to find your common denominator, the biggest thing you're gonna have to do is factor out these pieces that are a little bit too complicated. If I take a look at both of them, whatever you do to one, you're gonna do the other because they're the same exact denominator. If we're looking at them, there are 2 pieces, so it's either GCF or dots. They are not subtracting, so there's no difference for our dots in here, so that's not an option. But we do see that they share a letter X, so we're gonna pull that out, leaving behind an X plus 3. Now, the point of you finding, like Mr. Parada calls it, the common D, is to be able to figure out what can I multiply each and every single fraction by that will allow for these bottom pieces to cancel out. Because the goal for us is to get rid of the bottom of our fractions so we can solve the top and get an answer for X. So if we're looking at our bottom pieces, we obviously see that we have an X and an X plus 3. So that's coming along. But believe it or not, so is this 2. Because it's part of the bottom, it's going to be put into our common D formula. So we're going to put the 2 first. Numbers go before letters. Then we're going to put our X, and then we're going to put our X plus 3. So this is what I will be multiplying every single fraction by. It's a little bit different than your adding fractions because before what we were doing is looking for what they needed or what they were missing. In this case, our goal is to get rid of all of these bottoms by using this throughout the entire thing. So in our first fraction, we're going to multiply by 2x parenthesis x plus 3, 2x x plus 3, 2x x plus 3. And if we look at our first fraction, 2 and 2, if it's on top and on bottom, you can cross it off. We are looking over here, we have an X, and we have an X plus 3. Our bottom is missing now, just like we see in the previous fraction. And then our last one, X, X, X plus 3, X plus 3. At this point, all of our bottoms have canceled out. So all I'm gonna think about is this top portion right here. If we are looking at our information, starting with the first one, 1 times anything is just gonna be that leftover. So that's a nice little X plus 3 multiplication. Going to our next piece, we have 3 times 2, which will give us that positive 6. And then we have a 2, which is going to a 4x, and a 2 that's going to a 3. Make sure you're distributing that 2 to each piece. So 2 times 4x is our 8x, and then 2 times 3 is another positive 6. This bottom portion has been crossed off because you multiplied by a matching piece that contains every single bottom portion. So what you're left with is an equation, and remember, your whole goal is to solve for x. So if you're thinking about simplifying the equation, first step is to get rid of parentheses by distributing. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. Bring down your plus 6. Bring down your 8x plus 6. And when I do that distributive property, I notice that I now have a quadratic. Anything to the power of 2, x squared, t squared, m squared, whatever, is going to be a quadratic. So in this case, because we are a quadratic, we have to get everything to one side. In this problem, I'm gonna move my 8x and my 6 because my x squared is positive. Where it is where it's gonna stay. So moving that 8x first, make sure you're lining it up with its like term if there is one. Those will cross off, leaving a 6. Carry down your plus 6. 3 minus 8 is a negative 5x, and we carry down our x squared. Almost there, gotta get the last piece. This 6 is positive, it's gotta turn into a negative to be able to be moved. Canceling it out over here, I have a 0. 6 minus 6 also cancels. So I'm left with x squared minus 5x. And because we are set equal to 0, now we're trying to think about the idea of factoring, okay? In this case, we have two terms, so we have to ask ourselves GCF or dots. Yes, they have a subtraction sign, but 5 is not a perfect square. So we are going to say this is GCF because they have a letter in common. So the letter goes out in front. We are left with x, take away 5, and that's equal to 0. Both pieces will be set equal to 0, so we have x is equal to 0. No need to do any kind of math. We have finished up solving for that one. X minus 5 will set equal to 0. And we know whatever the sign is, it's going to turn into the opposite to be moved to the other side. So that negative 5 is going to become a positive 5 when we are solving. So we are at the last step in our example where we are going to have to check. We need to make sure that no zeros pop up when I plug in these answers into my bottom fractions. Remember, our bottom fractions, this one was a 2. We don't have to check that one. We're looking at the ones with the letters, okay? So since they're both x squared plus 3x, I'm gonna just kind of show you that idea down here. You would be taking out the x's, and you will be trying to put the 0 into its place. So 0 squared plus 3 times 0. This one is a 0, that one's a 0. 0 plus 0 ain't happening. We don't want our bottom to be 0. Then we take our 5, plug it into each one of these parentheses. 5 squared, 25, plus 3 times 5, 15. Would give us that 40. This is not a 0, we are okay. And if you're double checking your work onto the paper that Parada gave you, number 2 does give us only a 5, which means we are looking real good, okay? So that's number 2 on your fractional equations day 2 assignment. I did promise you that I would at least take a look at number 3 and get you set up on that one. So let's move out number 2. Number 3 does look a little intimidating because of how long our fraction is. But remember, first things first is to take a look at the bottoms and break apart your pieces. The only one that can be broken apart is the very last fraction. And this is an example of dots. They don't share a number or a letter other than 1. So we're going to split them up into 2 pieces. X and x. 9 can be 3 times 3, 1 plus, 1 minus. So if we're looking for our common D, what do they share? Okay, you are going to look at every single fraction and figure out what they have in common. If I look at this first one, we have an x minus 3 and an x minus 3. You only have to write it one time, putting it in the box. Now we're going to see an x plus 3 and an x plus 3. That goes in the box. Only one time. Okay? There's no other little pieces or numbers that are on there. So this is the piece of information that you are going to multiply every single fraction by. So we're going to write it out to the top. Okay? You're looking for anything that could possibly cancel. My x minus 3's. My x plus 3's. And over here, x plus 3's go, and my x minus 3's. So that means that my bottom has been completely wiped clean. So if we're talking about what's going to happen as we're distributing, we're going to look at our first fraction. This 2x is going inside to both pieces that were left behind, that x plus 3. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 3 is a positive 6x. Jump to your next piece. Careful of that negative sign. We have a negative 3 going to the x. That's a negative 3x. And a negative 3 times a negative 3 is a positive 9. Equals, there's nothing left to multiply. So everything you see here is everything that I will write down. Okay? You would be drawing your lines through the equal sign, and your goal is to first combine like terms, and then get everything onto one side. You have x squareds here, which means you're going to be working with a quadratic, all right? Get the x squareds on together, get those x's together, and then get your numbers together. And once you're finished with getting everything equal to 0, you are going to be factoring, okay? GCF dots or that AC method. Based off of what you have left behind, we'll decide what you're gonna do. Only thing I want you to be careful of is please make sure that once you've done all that hard work of finding x, what does x equal? Make sure you check it. You have to double check. If I put my answer into the denominator, does it equal 0? If it does, cross it off, you don't want it, okay? All right, you guys have fun working on that. Make sure you're submitting your work to Mr. Parada or I. You need to have 3 assignments in before the end of this week to ensure that you're doing good for the 3rd marking period, okay? Any questions on how to do that, reach out to me or Mr. Parada and we'll be happy to help. Hope all is well. Bye.